Clara stood paralyzed on the fractured pavement, her knuckles bone-white around the battered cardboard box. The city's familiar hum had been strangled into a deathly hush, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something unspeakable to unfold. Her name was Clara. The wind slithered through her short brown hair, icy tendrils snaking along her scalp, as if invisible hands were trying to drag her away from the threshold of terror she dared approach. She forced her gaze upward, tracing a trembling path from the broken curb, past iron railings gnawed by rust, to the monstrous silhouette of the apartment building looming above, its presence suffocating, predatory, and impossibly ancient. The building was a grotesque carcass, its hunched form blotting out the sky, paint peeling in sickly curling strips to reveal bruised, festering brick. It was less a home than a mausoleum, abandoned to rot and darkness. Something foul seemed to pulse within its walls, seeping out through the narrow black windows, each one a lidless, staring eye, unblinking, brimming with malice and accusation. Not a single window flickered with life, no lights, no movement, no warmth, only hollow sockets gaping into the night, as if the building had devoured every soul foolish enough to enter. It felt as though every former tenant had fled in terror, leaving only their shadows to haunt the walls. The building seemed to breathe, slow, guttural, and ravenous, fixing its gaze on Clara with a hunger that scraped at her bones. The box in her arms grew impossibly heavy, as if it contained not just her meager belongings, but the crushing weight of dread and regret. Each step toward the entrance was a descent into a nightmare from which there would be no waking. She remembered the photos online, bright, inviting, deceitful. The estate agent's words echoed in her mind, characterful, rich with history. But the screen had hidden the rot, the silence, the sense of something lurking, waiting to be fed. No photograph could capture the suffocating hush that strangled the street, or the way the air thickened and chilled as she neared the entrance, like stepping into the exhalation of something ancient, something that should never have awakened. The front door loomed, carved from ancient blackened wood. Its brass lion's head handle was tarnished and cruel, the eyes glinting with a predatory intelligence, the mouth twisted in a silent snarl, daring her to trespass, to awaken what slumbered within. She had no choice. This was her new home, apartment 4B. The number on the plaque glared at her, a warning etched in brass, not a welcome. The keys in her pocket bit into her palm, cold and sharp, a cruel reminder that she had signed away her safety, her future, to this place. There was no escape, not anymore. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to turn, to flee, to vanish into the night and never look back. But the street behind her was just as empty, just as dead, and the building's gaze pinned her in place, merciless and unblinking. The building waited, patient and ravenous, its shadow stretched across the pavement, a gaping maw ready to swallow her whole. Clara's breath trembled in her throat as she stepped into the darkness, into the waiting jaws of the unknown. The sky loomed overhead, a suffocating shroud of bruised, roiling clouds, pressing down on the city like a warning. The sun was smothered, its light strangled and lost, draining every trace of warmth and color from the world below. Everything was reduced to lifeless shades of gray and brown, as if the city itself was fading away. The light was sickly and thin, the kind that creeps in before a storm, when the world seems to freeze, paralyzed by dread, waiting for something terrible to break the silence. The clouds crawled across the sky, slow and relentless, like monstrous ships gliding over a black sea, blotting out hope with every passing second. Shadows stretched and twisted along the street, slithering up the walls of the old building, making it seem even more menacing, like something alive, watching, waiting. A sudden gust of wind howled through the emptiness, swirling around her ankles with icy fingers that seemed to reach for her. The wind snatched a brittle leaf from the gutter, sending it skittering across the pavement with a scratchy, desperate sound, unnaturally loud in the suffocating quiet. The noise shattered the silence, making Clara flinch. Her heart hammered in her chest, wild and frantic, as if it wanted to escape. The wind whispered as it passed, its voice thin and secretive, as if it carried messages only the dead could understand. Clara shivered violently, clutching her thin jacket tighter, but the cold was more than just air. It seeped from the stones, from the very bones of the building before her. The chill was ancient, unnatural, radiating from the bricks and mortar like a curse, as if the building itself exhaled a breath of pure dread. But it was the silence that truly suffocated her, a silence so deep it felt alive, pressing in, listening. This was a city, yet all the familiar sounds, traffic, voices, distant sirens, were swallowed whole, leaving only a void. Here, on this forsaken street, it was as if a wall of invisible glass had sealed her off from the living, trapping her in a world apart. The only sounds were the wind's sinister whisper and the frantic echoing thud of her own heart, loud in the emptiness. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating, as if the air itself was waiting for something to happen. It was a predatory silence, watchful and hungry, making the hairs on the back of her neck prickle with terror. Something was terribly, horribly wrong here. Clara's eyes darted to the windows, searching, desperate to prove she was alone, but dreading what she might see. Was that a face, pale and watching, lurking behind the black glass? A flicker, a movement, just at the edge of vision, gone before she could be sure it was ever there. All she saw was her own reflection, ghostly and pale, staring back at her with wide, frightened eyes. The sensation of being watched was overwhelming, suffocating, yet the street remained empty, mocking her fear. It was a nightmare contradiction, alone, yet never more exposed, never more vulnerable. The building itself seemed to breathe, its empty windows burning with a gaze that was both invisible and inescapable, fixated on her, waiting, hungry for her next move. Claire's thoughts spiraled in a fevered delirium, each one clawing at her sanity like icy talons scraping bone. Dread gnawed at her, relentless, as if something unseen slithered just out of sight. What malignant force had lured her to this forsaken place? She'd fled her old life, desperate for escape, only to be drawn to a city that pulsed with secrets and decay, a city that felt alive and hungry. Her mother's voice, now a ghostly murmur, slithered through her mind. "Are you sure about this, love? It seems so sudden." The words echoed, thick with warning, as if spoken from the other side of the grave. She had ignored those warnings, blinded by desperation. Now the city's shadows pressed in, and the streetlights flickered with a predatory hunger, as if the darkness itself was alive and watching. The building loomed before her, its rotting facade twisted into a grotesque sneer. Her mother's warning felt like a curse, and the windows glared back, hollow and accusing, as if daring her to enter and never return. She tried to steady her breath, but the air was thick, heavy with the stench of rot and secrets. Logic shriveled in the face of the building's silent, monstrous presence. Old buildings creaked, she lied to herself. But these sounds were unnatural, groans and whispers, as if the walls themselves were alive, conspiring in the darkness to keep her trapped. The estate agent had called it character, but what kind of character festers in the shadows, behind doors that moan like dying things and floors that sigh with the weight of lost souls? Her imagination, once a refuge, now betrayed her. In every empty window she glimpsed pale faces, watching, waiting, mouths frozen in a silent scream that clawed at her nerves. Had anyone ever truly lived here? Or had this place devoured them, draining hope and color until only shadows remained? The silence was suffocating, thick with secrets and the memory of vanished lives. She clung to her box of belongings, a pitiful shield against the encroaching darkness. Books, a photograph, a chipped mug. Useless, she thought, against the chill that seeped from the walls like a living thing. These things were meant to bring comfort, but the building's grim face sneered at her hope. Could anything warm a place so cold, so ravenous? The entrance yawned before her, a gaping maw swallowing all light. Inside, shadows writhed, eager to claim her as their own. Her memories felt small, powerless against the suffocating weight of whatever lingered here. The suspense pressed down, thick and inescapable. Fear twisted inside her, a cold, physical ache. Every instinct screamed, run, drop the box, flee into the night and never look back. But something darker, a morbid curiosity, rooted her to the spot. What secrets festered behind that door? What horror waited in the gloom, hungry for her arrival? The fear was suffocating, but the unknown was irresistible. A siren's call into darkness. She could not move, trapped between terror and the chilling promise of what waited within. Clara's breath trembled in her chest, fogging the cold night air as she clutched the box tighter, knuckles white with dread. The cardboard bit into her skin, a sharp, stinging reminder that she was still alive, still able to feel fear. Shadows pooled at her feet, whispering doubts, urging her to run. She could stand frozen, paralyzed by the nightmares clawing at her mind, or she could step into the unknown and face the darkness that waited. The decision was simple, yet it felt like a pact with something unseen, an irreversible crossing. Fear pressed down on her, suffocating and cold, but deep within, a fragile ember of defiance flickered, refusing to be snuffed out. She had come too far to let the building's sinister presence turn her away now. Her legs felt like lead, every step a battle against the invisible hands that tried to hold her back. She crossed the cracked pavement, each footfall echoing in the silence, and climbed the worn steps that seemed to groan beneath her weight. Up close the door was a patchwork of scars, each scratch a silent scream, each gouge a memory of something desperate trying to get in, or out. The brass lion's head handle was icy, its features worn smooth by countless trembling hands, each one hoping to escape what lay within. Claire's hand hovered, fingers twitching, as if the handle might bite. She could still flee, back to the safety of the streetlights and the living. The thought was a siren's call, promising warmth and light, but it was too late for that now. She did not turn back. The darkness had already claimed her shadow. With a shuddering exhale, she banished the last of her doubts, forcing herself to move. This was her trial, her nightmare to conquer. Her fingers fumbled in her pocket, closing around the jagged, frozen metal of the key to apartment 4B. She drew it out, its ancient shape glinting in the sickly city light. A skeleton key, like something from a ghost story, meant to open doors best left closed. It looked as if it could unlock not just a door but the secrets and horrors sealed away for generations. The key was hers now, her burden, her invitation. Clara slid the key into the gaping black keyhole, the darkness inside seeming to reach for her. Metal scraped against metal, the sound shrill and unnatural, echoing like a scream in the silence. It felt as if something inside the building had awakened, something ancient and hungry. She held her breath, heart pounding, and turned the key. The lock gave way with a thunderous clunk, the sound reverberating through the bones of the building like a warning. The echo seemed to rattle the windows, stirring the shadows within. The door groaned open, just a crack, and a suffocating darkness oozed out, thick and impenetrable. A chill, fetid breath drifted from within, dust, decay, and the scent of things long dead. Clara cast one last desperate glance at the bleak sky, then forced herself to step into the waiting maw of the building. The darkness inside seemed to pulse, swallowing the last remnants of daylight as the door creaked shut behind her. The air was thick, suffocating, heavy with secrets and the echo of footsteps that belonged to the dead. Every shadow writhed and stretched, watching her, waiting for her to falter. Clara's heart thundered, each beat a frantic warning, but the silence pressed in, absolute and merciless. Somewhere deep within the apartment, a floorboard groaned, a sound too purposeful, too alive. The chill in the air was more than cold. It was the touch of something unseen, something that wanted her to know she was not alone. The apartment was no home. It was a gaping mouth, eager to consume her. Clara stepped forward, the darkness swallowing her whole, and the haunting gaze of the unknown followed, hungry and unblinking.